Alrighty, so I posted on the community tab what type of content would you like to see from me. Comment below. And I got this comment from Dennis. What is narrative in your view, and how do you know when you're going to trade that narrative or not? I thought this was a very good question, which is why I'm making this video. Yeah, if you have any good questions or good responses, just this will be up. So respond on here, and then if I find it worthwhile, I think it's a good idea to give a recording on, then I'll do so. But I thought this was a good question. What is your narrative? What is narrative in your view, and how do you know when you're going to trade that narrative or not? So there's a question. I mean, I like this question because I'm not exactly sure, but what I'm getting from it is that I mean, only if you're kind of more experienced or a little bit more comfortable in the ICT concepts do you ask questions like this, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're asking more one-dimensional, simple questions. I think this is a very involving question, and it's also, once you understand, once you're able to unpack narrative, I think it changes a lot of how you perceive and apply and use the concepts, which is going to definitely change your trading, maybe your model, and basically how you do everything. Basically, I think everything starts with narrative and ends with narrative, and everything is intertwined with narrative, with regard to the concepts and how you're gonna internalize where price is going to draw to, whether it's an imbalance or liquidity. But narrative, what is narrative? I mean, I don't know exactly what an official definition of narrative is. I'm sure ICT, I mean, I can recollect Michael saying it on a few occasions in some of the YouTube videos, but for me, narrative is basically how are you understanding and reading what has happened, and as the next step from that, as a result of that, what is it implicating that it wants to do next? Okay. And like in parentheses, or in I can't speak, but tied with that idea is in terms of what it wants to do next. The next part has to be relevant It needs to be relevant to your trading. So not necessarily like your trading relevant to your trading needs. I don't know if that's the right way, but it needs to be relevant to your trading in the terms of, like, let's say you are a position trader, like you're holding positions for multiple weeks, you know, maybe like 6 weeks or something like that. Then you might have the same skill and the same concepts and whatever, but your narrative has to be on a different stratosphere. It needs to be on a different scope, you know. So your analysis might have to start on a different time frame, or it needs to be looking at more data, or it needs to be considering more things, or maybe not considering more things. You know. But even when it comes to like you know, your entry time frame, or like where you're looking for your entries to form, your narrative needs to lead you in terms of to give you a context on what you need. Let's say like your entry time frame ends up becoming like an hourly or a daily for your position trading. Then your narrative needs to provide that information where you're able to, you know, use arrays that are meaningful, so that when you're trading your entry, you have some logic and stuff to work on. All right. So like that's like your position. If you're an intraday trader, basically the way that you read the market, however you read your market, however you make sense of the order flow and what the candles are trying to do, it needs to be directly relevant to what you're trying to do. If you're trying to be a one, you know, a scalper in and out, you know, within a few minutes, like, you necessarily need a daily chart and daily and chart level analysis? No. But you're gonna need solid narrative on the intraday market structure that's gonna support and match and provide you basically the same amount of confidence and like foundation as someone who's doing the top down, you know, to get their standard stuff, right? So it needs to be relevant to what you're doing. Like this can also, you know, that might also put into factor like what session you trade. Like if you trade the London session, if you trade the New York session, if you trade the indices like AM, PM, whatever, or if you trade Asia, it's going to change a lot of things in terms of what you need to focus on and what you don't need to necessarily waste energy onto. All right. But this could be a little bit vague. Maybe not. More than this, I think narrative. What is more important than narrative is like your aim. You are aiming to get in sync with the present narrative that IPTA is operating / conducting or trying to engineer. So the problem I have with a lot of people doing narrative is not necessarily what they're doing. I mean, yeah, what they're doing, but their narrative is very different in terms of like, just because they mark out a 4-hour order block or a daily, weekly level or whatever, it got a bunch of lines on their MSC chart, they put meaning into things that is not necessarily what IPTA is doing. So like instead of trying to use the information that IPTA is giving, and piecing the clues together and the signatures together to come to a conclusion that, okay, this is what IPTA is trying to do. It's trying to draw to this buy side or draw to the sell side, and it might take, like what did it do last week, what did it do the previous day, previous session, what did it do in some of these candles, and considering all of this and what it has done, and what the conditions are, it seems like IPTA is trying to do this, okay? But other people's narrative is like, oh, there's an order block here, so it has to be, there's a bullish order block here, and we tapped into it and we rejected it, so now we're bullish. You're like forcing a sentiment, you're forcing a bias to the market when the market is not adhering to your words. It's not considering any of that. Like, your job is trying to understand what these candles are doing, what it is doing. All right. So instead of defining what narrative is, which is not really that important in the sense, it's more important that you are aiming to read the present narrative. Like that's your goal. All right. Which is also another way of saying, which is why a lot of times we're trying to determine what is your drawn liquidity, because like that is the most like direct, as close as we can get into like encapsulating as a phrase or as a lingo on what we're talking about right now, narrative, and how you get in sync with it. So my aim is always, when I look at a chart, what's the present narrative? Okay, is price trying to draw somewhere? And sometimes, frequently, price is not trying to draw anywhere. Alright, then all you can really do is note what it did in the past and come up with a few scenarios on when things will be activated, so that, okay, if price gets above a certain level or below a certain level, and I think we're outside, or there's a market structure shift, or we're outside of a certain dealing range, I think by that, maybe if there's a displacement by that time, I think it's more likely, or it's going to become more clear and obvious that price is trying to get to this level of buy side, for example. Let me give an analogy. I think narrative is the same thing as having context. So like it's using whatever order blocks, whatever thing about ICT, whatever concepts, whatever breakers, whatever for value gaps, market maker models, YouTube model, turtle soups, whatever, power of 3, AMD, some profiles, it doesn't matter, whatever you're using. How much or how little you know about the concepts, like you're using that to gain a context, like not just like a small amount of you want to give yourself as much context as possible, as much information as possible, so that you're aware of your surroundings, that you're aware of the current market conditions. All right, so like it's the same thing as when you go get, open the car door and you put in the key and you start the engine. Like you want to make sure that your seat is comfortable and like you're in a good seating position. Okay, you want to make sure there's no like snow or like anything on the windshield that's covering your visibility. You want to make sure your mirrors are good for your height and good for you. Maybe like someone else was driving before and they messed it up. All right, you want to make sure that all that's good. You want to make sure that the rear view mirror is all settled. and then you're gonna start driving, right? And while you're driving, you're gonna be looking in the all four directions to keep yourself aware of what's around your four-wheel car. Okay. Um, I mean, like if you're a football fan or like a soccer fan, like they say that like the elite world class level players, before they receive a ball or like as the ball is traveling to them, they usually can look around their surrounding, like tilt their head like 3 to 5 times or more to be aware of what's around them. So like by the time the ball is at their feet, they have as much context on where their teammates are, where their teammates are moving, where the opponents are, and where there's open space and not, so that they can make, you know, the most highest probable proper decision for what they're trying to achieve. All right. Um, and I think actually that's probably the best way. That's how I look at narrative and trying to read narrative. It's because when you're receiving the ball, let's say like you're a soccer player, you're a midfielder, like you're Messi. Like you watch Messi or something like that, they're always constantly looking around. Like they're not just looking at the player they're supposed to defend or they're supposed to follow. They're always looking around, checking back, checking to the right, over their shoulders, and trying to read what's happening on the pitch. Okay, but it's not like all the time, like 100% of the time, the ball is gonna come to you. Most of the time, the ball is doing something at at another area of the field, and you're not even really a part of it. Um, but you're still watching the ball. You're still watching what's happening around the ball. You're still watching. I mean, that's what most people do. You're just, you know, narrow vision on the ball, but you're trying to have a read on what's happening around you, so you could basically pick out where there's a mistake or where there's space, and you're trying to attack that. Okay, and so that's part of, you know, vision of their vision. So like you're constantly doing that, but you can't. We only have two eyes. We only have a certain field of view. So like we have to tilt our head, and you get just piece information based on how much we're looking around, and it's constantly changing and flowing, right? But when it comes time for you to receive the ball, you have only a few seconds before you actually have to make a decision that's gonna where you're gonna actually make a mistake, or you're gonna you're gonna beat the enemy. You're gonna beat your man, or you're gonna find that clinical pass with the vision that you got before you receive the ball, right? And maybe like when you receive the ball, like you're not in a good space, or like you have to give the ball back, and you have to, you know, go and do something else. Like again, it's constantly flowing and changing. Like you constantly have to be like, so that's why I say you read the present narrative based on the information that you have, which is limited to the candles the current candle. That's all the information you have. Like you can be a whatever wizard on, oh, this price is gonna do this, is it? Like the next candle or next few candles, or like, you know, like let's say like it's Asia right now. Like before I go to sleep, and by the time I wake up, the present narrative that you were reading, which was probably correct if you know how to read the narrative, it might have completely been changed. So narrative is not necessarily static, it's always dynamic. Like you're not working with chess pieces, you're working with soccer players, and every half a second the state of the game is changing. You know, even if it doesn't feel like it's having a major difference. Okay, so always the aim is you get the present narrative based on what you're reading. You know, whatever is on the daily chart, weekly chart, like the top down stuff is good. But it needs to be usable. Like, it probably doesn't involve a lot of PD arrays. It probably isn't like I mean, I don't know about you, but this feels like a lot of lines, right? But in actuality, it's actually not that much, because like some of this, like you can ignore some of this stuff, but like even if you're looking at from this high to this low, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, some sell side 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, a fair value gap 10. You know, there's like 10 things. I don't even need all 10 of these things to do my, you know, to trade for tomorrow. But these are only weekly and daily arrays. Like if you start like adding just even like 1 hour and like 1 15-minute and like a few other 5 or 1 minute, like you can't read the chart necessarily. But you're trying to read the present narrative. How do you do that? I mean, first, it's going to be like anything. To be able to read a story or a fairy tale or a novel, you're going to first be able to read English or read whatever text, whatever language it's in. And then you're going to have to be able to read it in your head or read it out loud. So you're going to have to be able to verbalize and speak it. Okay, not only do you need to have the ability to read, but you have to be able to like read and comprehend what you're reading or verbalizing, right? So that you're like understanding the story. All right. So you need all of those skills. All right. I mean, you don't need storytelling skills because that's the novel, the book, the story is already written. The narrative is already written by it's doing what it's doing. You're trying to read that present narrative because basically you're reading a book that is not technically finished. It's always in the ing. It's always printing. Right? It's printing the next page. It's printing the next chapter. But it's doing that. Okay. And it knows where it's trying to get you to the next place. It knows where it's trying to draw to, or how it's going to engineer, and then based on that engineering, it's going to try to deliver narrative. So all you're trying to do is you're trying to read. You're trying to read at as best as possible at the present pace on what information that last candle gave you within this entire context. Let's see. So going back to the idea of like it needs to be relevant or like relevant to your trading. I'll give you an example of what I do. So like let's say at the beginning of the week, I'm trying to determine where is the weekly candle that I'm supposed to trade. So let's say Friday has passed already and we're at next week. You know, we're at Sunday or Monday, you know, when I'm opening the chart or something like that. I'm trying to determine, okay, this coming week that I'm trading, that weekly candle, where is it trying to draw to? Where is it trying to get to? All right. And depending on, you know, how solid or lacking your understanding and experience with the market and concepts are, you might have a wrong draw, you might have improper expectations, or you might have reasonable expectations and scenarios, right? So like, I don't know, let's say for the next week I will be looking for a price to give me information on whether it wants to try to reach for this sell side or it wants to reach for this buy side. I think this sell side is much at the current moment with the information from the present narrative, I think it's indicating more of a plausibility that we're going to draw for sell side, but I'm open for it to change. Okay, but based on that, like, I mean, I can say this because I already know what the context is. But let's say I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out at the beginning of the week, or whenever I'm starting fresh or like opening up a chart again. I'm either using my last understanding of the narrative, and by glancing at it and seeing that nothing has majorly changed from my previous narrative, that I can just continue my narrative. If that's the case, there's not much work to be done. I just figure out what the past few candles has done and be like, okay, like, this is what happened, we're on track. But if we have not done that, or I come in at the end of a fresh week, or like it's been a while and I kind of forgot what the narrative was, I need to get familiar with what happened. I need to be getting myself familiar with the story again, and with the main goal of, okay, for this week, are we trying to get to sell side or buy side here? And if I don't know, like if I don't have enough information to come to a determination here from the information from this weekly chart, it might be a daily chart. Is there any information here? Is there anything, any detail in the narrative that wasn't painted here because of the time frame or whatnot, where it didn't give me information where I could decide, wait, on this time frame, I might be not okay. I might, sometimes it might be I go to 1 hour, 4 hour, and it still might not give me information. All right, because maybe I mean, I don't know why that doesn't occur for most of these people, but maybe we're not trying to draw anywhere. Maybe it is not actually really in a program to draw to buy side or sell side. Maybe it's just doing nothing, and that is a thing. Like, that could be occurring on the daily, weekly chart. It could be happening on the intra-week or on it during a session. Like, that could be possible, right? But we come in to the session, we come into the day, we come into the week, we come into the we come to the chart with an anticipation and expectation that, okay, price needs to move for us to be able to trade and have opportunities, right? So in terms of weekly perspective, that means it's going to have to draw, it needs to move up or down, or it needs to move a range that is reasonable in terms of a weekly perspective for it to be considered to have moved. It's not really, if it's not really doing anything, then it just becomes a bad market to trade. But yeah, I'll come into the week, be like, okay, what is it? Where is it trying to draw to? Okay, and based on where it's trying to draw to, let's say I'm thinking price is trying to draw to this low, so I'll have this one in this blue. Okay, and let's say this is where we close. Then, even if I may not necessarily always be able to have to detailedly depict, okay, we're gonna do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Generally, I can have an expectation for what I want to see happen for the week. Okay, generally, all right. Or like, as I get information from Asia, as I get information from London, New York, I'm gonna be able to see if we're on track or not. All right, because what I'll be doing is, basically, if price is here and price is trying to get to here, in my opinion, I will need to figure out, okay, what is fair value. Okay, let's say people are like drawing up this high to this low. It's like, oh, we're in discount, we have to go into premium. okay, if this is your dealing range and you're bullish in some way, you have a narrative that tells you, okay, we need to get up here, not only just because we're in high to low discount. Oh, we have to go in premium. It's not always discount premium, discount premium. Like, it needs to kind of add up. Okay, some people will be like, oh, we need to get into premium. But why am I targeting this low then? Because I don't consider this premium. I consider this premium enough because that's not my dealing range. Okay, let's say this is the dealing range, high to low, premium pricing. Okay, based on what we have done, where we have come from, and based on our information, I don't think it's necessary for us to come up into here. I think it's more likely, based on what we have done, that it's more likely trying to get to this sell side and to this sell side. So basically, in determining a draw on liquidity or in determining what is fair value, you kind of do half of the work for the other. So like you kind of do half. If you determine that this is premium, this is fair value, why is this fair value? If this is fair value, that means this is fair value to go lower. So that means, in a sense, you're bearish. Okay? But then like the opposite can be said, like, you know, even if you're using the same dealing range, if you use this dealing range and you see this as discount, there's something in your narrative or in how you're reading this where you're essentially bullish for some reason. And so you're reading this dealing range and you want to utilize it in a bullish sense, right? So you just think that's discount, you think you want to, you know, attack this dealing range high and this buy side. Okay, but you kind of come to these determinations, okay? And within this swing high and to this swing low, if you think this swing high needs to stay intact, okay, this becomes like your invalidation point, right? So like from here on, you're most likely neutral and more likely bullish, all right? Because, you know, because within this high and where we are in price, you know, like here, you're gonna set some level of fair value again. What is fair value? What is premium enough for us to continue this original idea of bearish draw on liquidity to here, right? And then, I mean, let's say it's at this breaker or something, or at this fair value gap, or, you know, this fair value gap, or this fair value, anywhere. And then we create another swing point. There's gonna be another swing, and you're gonna have to determine, okay, we have done this swing. What does that mean in terms of this narrative? Are we on track? Okay, we're on track. Okay, how should we continue? Where in this swing, or in this swing, what would be fair value for us to continue this story to get down here? Okay, like, and if this is happening throughout the course of the week, then you're gonna put the sessions and the trading days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, into account. But you're always just determining what is fair value based on the narrative, and as long as it's maintaining that, your narrative is on track. Like in terms of what you need to do, it's not gonna be very involving. Does that make sense? I mean, for me, I'm a New York trader. I'm mainly an indices trader. So a lot of times I'll be like, okay, I mean, a lot of times I'll be able to articulate the low of the day, or, you know, this I mean, this is not a good place, but I guess, okay, I'm bearish, and let's say this order block right here, this mean threshold, I might be able to articulate, okay, like this mean threshold of this, I mean, this is not an order block, but this candle right here, the mean threshold of this, I think it should be held as resistance. It should be held as a premium rate. The high of the day, high of the session, should come here. All right, but most of the time, the high of the day, the opposite end of the range, is going to be generated in London, right? But I won't be up for London. So like, I don't even necessarily, even though I make the practice and I'm in the habit of calling this, because this in a sense is how I'm articulating what is fair value. Like, let's say for example this level. In actuality, it's more kind of where you're in price here. I don't want us to really be extending much beyond here, but as a delta factor, let's say like I give it this much area, a margin of error. That is what is fair value for me to continue lower. But this area of fair value, this turning point, is only going to happen most of the time, at least in this narrative, this how we're currently in, is going to happen in Asia or London. Like, if price is here, New York, when I'm woken up, there's a problem. I mean, there's not necessarily a problem, but there's a good chance that whatever present market narrative I was using before I woke up, before I went to sleep, that's probably not the narrative anymore. Something as it probably has done something, or it has done nothing, to the point where like the narrative will have to be rehashed, refigured out. It needs to be adjusted. All right. So like I will call, or I'll have the practice of calling, highs and lows of the day, highs and lows of the week and such. But it doesn't necessarily affect my trading, because it's not like I'm gonna enter in proximity to there, because I won't be trading then. All right. So I don't my analysis, my trading does not need to die on this hill of me getting it right. Okay, it's more important that I get the narrative right and not specific details or one detail. That's not the crux of my trading. All right. And so if it turns there, if it goes there and it turns there, or if it turns there and then it has a swing in London and we're like down here in price, like, that's a lot of confirmation, that's a lot of information, that's a lot of context, that's a lot of, okay, I read the flow of the story correct, and we are flowing. Like, that's, how does that not enhance and empower your trading? It definitely is going to. All right. I think the second half of the question was, how do you know when you're going to trade your narrative or not? I am always trading my narrative, because my viewpoint on how I'm viewing price is always going to be tuned to the narrative, even if I have to change it, from the previous time that I read the narrative, So it will always have to be, but it's not like, let's say, like all the time, like 100% of the uptime when I'm in front of a chart or when I'm trying to trade, is there going to be a clear narrative? Because I mean, there's a higher chance that if you have a weekly draw, then you'll be able to with more higher probability come to a daily draw. Okay, you'll be able to come to a conclusion on that, and that gives you a higher chance than if you didn't have a daily draw, of coming to a sessional draw. All right, but not all the time, not every session is price trying to necessarily draw somewhere. Okay, so then in those cases, you don't have necessarily a narrative to trade off of. You're just tape reading to try to get in sync with the present narrative. So that when price gives indication, then you are in the mode where you can trade your narrative. Okay. So let's say for this trading day, Thursday, this was your draw on liquidity, and it started doing this in London, and you are a New York trader, so like it's by the time you're in, you know, this or this candle. Okay, this was your draw. Okay, maybe you caught the, maybe you're able to forecast the turning point, maybe not, maybe you're, it doesn't matter. You're up here now. Okay, this is when you're at the charts. This is when you're trading. So when you get onto the charts and you open the chart and you're like, okay, this was my narrative before I went to sleep. We're on track. Okay, now you're gonna have to tailor. Not, it can be a narrative, it doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, for me it is narrative. Everything is narrative. But when I'm looking at like the 5-minute chart and we're on the 7 o'clock area or something like that, I'm gonna need to assess, is narrative on track? This the draw on liquidity? This is still the draw on liquidity? Yes. Okay. Then I need to match this to the current context here and to the current scope and to the scope of the time frame and what and I'm anticipating and what my expectation is for the New York session, you know, from 7 to 10 or 7 to 12 to noon. Okay, so like, okay, we're at 7. I think we're gonna draw to there still. Okay, so now you have a target. So now you have to come to a determination. Okay, based on where we are now, is it necessary for us to do something? Like, is it necessary that we come back up here to go down here? Or is it not necessary? Like, what is fair value? Like, that's basically asking what's fair value for us to going lower. Because you've come to a determination that we're going to draw to this. There's only like 2 outcomes. Like, either you just stay heavy and keep going to here, or we come into premium and then we go, right? We take out, come into some sort of fair value and go lower. Okay, you're not in the business, in the scenario of trying to determine, okay, are we bullish or bearish? You've come to the determination we're bearish. This is the draw. Okay, so it's gonna draw in such a fashion. So like, based on defining the upper and lower limits, by determining what is fair value, then you only need to apply your model or your entry mechanism to this framework. Okay, which would be you know, you use this OTE right here. You just enter in these series of candles, just order block, enter there, and you get some pips. All right. So usually when you compare a daily draw and a sessional draw and they're corresponding, usually those are going to be the high probability, easy, like no need to think type of trading, and you're going to get some nice moves, nice type of moves. Okay. But there are also sessions or moments where like the daily draw and the draw for the session is not going to match. All right, and the chances of doing those type of scenarios are going to be when the intraday structure is not that involving. There's not much to work with, so you're going to have to use some micro market structure and trying to determine if it's going to draw to that micro market structure dealing range high or low, and that's your draw on liquidity, and that's going to become your intra-session or scalping type of draw. And that, it doesn't necessarily need a daily draw or a weekly draw. It doesn't necessarily even need any of that context. It doesn't need to regard any of that. It could literally go opposite to that or against that, and that's fine. But those type of scenarios require much more experience, much more comfortability, and you know, likely it's going to be a little bit more advanced trading than this simple high probability condition trades. All right, so yeah, short answer to that is I am always trading your narrative. Like there could be a lot of factors involved, there could be a lot of detail involved, but really what it comes down to for me is when I'm pressing a button, it makes sense to me why we're going to draw to somewhere. Alright, whether it's a daily draw or micro market structure, sessional draw, or a scalping draw, is when I either have been able to read the tape and easily being able to follow that, okay, we're gonna draw to here for, you know, like how do I, like let's say from here, like when we're here in price, if I could anticipate this turning point, or like when we're here in price in London, I was already thinking we're gonna draw up down to here. All right, like as we're going down to here, you just get more confident that you're on side, right? But like let's say I only traded here, all right. So like this would be an example of even prior to me trading, pressing the button, I'm already like confident, have the conviction that we're going to draw here. Alright, there's going to be other scenarios where like throughout this price action, it might not make sense to me. I might not be able to make sense of a narrative. And maybe here, maybe it's not. Maybe I have some ideas, but like maybe by this time or so, I'm more convinced that we're going to draw to here. Alright. You know, and maybe by then, okay, it's clear to me, and then I enter here. Sometimes it's going to only become clear to me later, and that's when I have the conviction, and then I'll pull the trigger. So most of the time is when I have clear conviction and clarity on the draw liquidity. That's when I'm trading my narrative, and that's when I'm usually trading. So I'm trading my narrative. Right, but to get to this point, it's not just reading these candles. There's usually, you know, a narrative on, you know, on the intra week and on the week perspective that allows me to make sense of some of these intraday and intra-session movements. All right, if I don't necessarily have that context, I can't just flat out baseline necessarily make sense of what's happening on these candles. I need the context. All right, and at least what it does is having the context. It doesn't even matter if I get this right or not, if I read this right or not. Even just being able to identify, oh, this is fair value for me to go lower, gives you the framework. It gives you the checkpoints in place so that if price goes against your anticipations and expectations, you can make sense of it on the bullish case. All right, and you would add this concept goes fractally down to all these time frames, you know, in terms of what's fair value for, in terms of the daily perspective, in terms of the intraday perspective, in terms of the session, in terms of you know, micro session, you know, micro dealing range perspective. It's going to all bleed into and affect each other. So it's important because it gives you the train tracks on how, it's basically the feedback. Like if you don't, it doesn't even matter if this is wrong. Okay, let's say you're in a habit of doing something like this or something like this consistently every day, week in, week out, month in, month out. You're gonna get feedback on this. Maybe this was trash. All right, maybe the way that you are trying to delineate narrative and read the present narrative and break down these candles, maybe it's not that proper. Maybe it's not that beneficial, useful. You're gonna get feedback on that, right? Or you're gonna get feedback on being able to read where it's drawing to better based on something like this. Okay, so I would start with, you know, if you're not doing narrative, I would start with just come to it for the week. Where's the weekly trend? where is the weekly expansion? Where is trying to draw to? Okay. And if the candle is trying to expand to this, how should it do it? Like what? How much is it allowed to retrace? Things like that. And then you're gonna break that fractally down. Okay, Monday is gonna do this. Tuesday is gonna do this. Okay. If Tuesday expands this much like this, okay, for the next trading day for Wednesday's low of the week, in the bullish case, where would be fair value for Wednesday low of the day, okay? And then London is going to do something, okay? Now based on what London has done, where should New York find its fair value to continue higher? Because Wednesday is supposed to be a bullish up close day, no? Okay, and then what is that going to mean for Thursday? Okay, if Thursday reaches the weekly draw, okay, what should the rest of Thursday look like? Like if it meets it in London or it meets in New York, okay, then what does, London close look like? What does the indices PM session look like? What does Friday look like? Things like that. The more whole and solid you could make your narrative, the easier it becomes to adjust your narrative or like retailer your narrative to the changes. That's what allows you to be a little bit more nimble. Like if the more detailed your daily and weekly, not daily and weekly candle in terms of this entire chart and like all the weekly chart is all of this. No, like in the scope of week is trying to expand to here or here. Basically this high to this low. In terms of this high to this low, in terms of a weekly array perspective, what is relevant? Daily, this high to this low. What are the daily arrays that are relative? Your daily chart and your weekly chart is not all of this, all this high, and all of these lows. No, it's this high to that low. That's the price action. That's the price. This high, or this run, this low. This is the price run you care about. You don't need to care about all of this arrays and all of the whatever is down here on the left side of the chart. Left side chart does not matter necessarily in that much. In that type of way. It matters in other types of ways. But this low to this side, okay, we're generally supposed to do this. How should this unfold? Okay, what should it look like on a 4 hour? You don't have to know necessarily on a 4 hour or 1 hour. Okay, you could break it down in more terms of like New York session, London session, Monday London session, New York session, Tuesday New York, Wednesday London, New York, things like that. Okay, or the opposite, we're trying to draw lower into there. That's the range of price. That is your active zone. Like everything else is out of bounds. Okay, so the more that you can delineate things like that, you'll find that you'll have more clarity in what you're wanting to see and what your narrative is. You'll have an easier time of tracking it. You'll have an easier time of tracking it within these time frames. You'll have an easier time of tracking with it within London, within New York, within the sessions, and while you're trading. Okay, and it'll get rid of all of those questions of, oh, how do I use the time frames? What time frame is the best? Like, oh, how does the time frame plays into? There's no way it plays into each other in a certain way. They all play into each other. It's just can you read the narrative that is being presented in these time frames, whether it's all of these or none of these or only a certain select few of them. Okay. Yeah, but the more you practice this, the more you adhere to this, the more you adopt this type of attitude, I think it's what changed my is what upgraded me a lot in how I understand these concepts. This is mainly the application of how you apply what you learn. Like, it needs to be applied in this type of way so that you get the feedback, that you get the experience under the belt, so that you can trade off of your analysis and opinion on price. Right? That's how you become an independent. And get rid of the expectation that you're supposed to know every single high and low, and you're supposed to be able to forecast and anticipate every single candle or every single session, even the ones that you don't trade. All right. Like, you're not a London session trader. Why would you expect that you're gonna be able to utilize something better for London than someone who trades London and they specialize it? Like, they're gonna have special strengths compared to somebody else. Like, if you're a New York trader, you're gonna have much more strength in New York because you're watching the New York candles tape printing live with more screen time than the London trader. All right. So be open to that. Be fluid with narrative, and yeah, always try to trade your narrative. Like, if your setup, if your whatever, I don't know, if your model has an issue with the narrative, like, you're probably doing something wrong. Like, something's gotta feel wrong in your gut. You gotta make sense of that first. Either your model, like something, what you see as your model playing out is not playing out because your narrative is correct, or your model is right and your narrative, you were reading it wrong. Based on your model performing, you're based on your model starting to play out, you may have to adjust or make an addition, or you make a little change to your narrative, maybe on a tiny aspect, because maybe your model is only like a scalping model, or like it's only dealing with, you know, certain range of this from down here to this low, which doesn't necessarily change the entire narrative, but it's within the bounds of what is allowable and what's okay. Right? And so if your narrative here cannot give you the information or like enough context, enough determination for you to be able to go into your 15 minute or 5 minute and what is it called, to basically pull out your narrative and apply it into a smaller range of price, that's going to impact your trading model, your trading framework, that likely means that your main narrative, it does not have enough information. You don't actually have a narrative, because you can't use your analysis and use that to pour it into and speak into where you want to trade, how you want to trade, which is kind of what I was saying about early on in the beginning, about your narrative has to be specified and beneficial and directly impacted, inputable, injectable into your trading, because that's why you're pressing the button. Like, the influence of your narrative has to go that far, and that's going to mean you're going to have to be able to come to specific conclusions about certain ideas on how the candle should play out and where it should draw to. Right? If you can't do that on a consistent, or like a, you know, on a weekly basis, you know, you're probably not making sense of these candles. You are not doing narrative. Okay, you're doing something else. You're doing something else with these fair value gaps and breakers and order blocks. Wherever you learned it from, whoever you learn from, whoever you do it with, you're not utilizing it. Like it should give you that much information. All right. The only time when you would have unclear narrative is when you need to gather information, when you have to read the order flow, you have to read how current institutional order flow is operating, whether it's on a high time frame or a lower time frame. You're tape reading to get more information in the present candles about, so that you have more information and indication on where it's trying to draw to, because that's going to be basis for your next steps. It doesn't matter where price is going to. Like let's say you're calling prices drawing up to here, to this buy side. Cool. So are you gonna trade? Does that mean, okay, unless you're gonna press the button here, okay, buy here, and then put the stop somewhere? I don't know where you want to put. You gotta price it at a proper space. But that's the problem. If you're calling for prices here, and this is not your trade, I don't know, let's say like that's your risk parameters and whatever. Unless you're trading this with this stop, and that's what your button is, that's what you're trading, that's your trade. You don't need to get this right at this moment in time. It's cool if you do, and if it is indicating wants to draw into there, yeah, there's a lot of other factors and a lot of other considerations and headaches that automatically disappear in when price, starts to do whatever it needs to do to get up to there. Like this run from here to here is much more straightforward to you. Not a lot of variables. All right. It gives you clarity on how you're gonna anticipate and project and follow what's happening. Unless you're gonna actually press the button there, you can get this wrong. It's fine. All right. But what you do have to get right, or you have to get more on side on, if you are an intra-week trader, you want to start with, okay, where are we trying to get to for the week? Is the price going to get to there for the week? Probably not. Like the chances, chances are very low. All right, but is there a good chance that for the week we can try to get up into here or up into here or down into here? Yeah, probably. There's a very good chance, as long as it's not going to be like a non-eventful week, no volatility. All right, and based on, as a stepping stone from that, you're going to have to come to daily. Where are we trying to draw to for the day? All right, you do have to get those more right than wrong, because that impacts how you're viewing the session. Okay, but ultimately you can get the weekly and daily draw wrong too, because that's like, let's say you're calling for you're bearish for the day. Okay, you're correct. Good. All right. And let's say you even got this premium array and whatever, maybe there's fair value, whatever. Let's say you had the premium array correct here. All right. In this case, it does not matter, because you're not pressing the button here because you're a New York trader, right? So unless your trade idea was, oh, I'm gonna trade off of that H4 premium array fair value gap or order block here, I'm pressing the button here, placing the stop, wherever above the array, and my trade is, unless it's that, you don't even have to get this right. This unless it's your trade, right? But when price gets down to here and we're in New York, and you're a New York trader, you're trying to scalp the New York, not scalp, but you're trying to get the New York range, then you do have to get at least this draw right? Or like a draw into this order block correct, right? And from here to there, that's your range of opportunity, and you have to get the parameters and your expectations correct in that, because that's what you're pressing the button for. If you're scalping like, let's say, just this candle, then you don't have to get this draw right either. You have to get a different, probably a more difficult parameter correct. Like you need to gain information where there's no information. You need to call a draw on a more micro scale, right? And you need to get wherever you're entering that premium and then the stop to target. You gotta get that one right, you know. But there is a higher chance that if you get you're because you're aware of the surroundings, you're looking at all four mirrors, and you're on the soccer pitch, on the football pitch, and you're aware of your surroundings. There's a higher chance that you can make a more well-informed decision, right? And that would be equivalent to like having a daily and weekly draw, okay, and a sessional draw. Right? Having a weekly draw should help you get a better insights on the daily draw, which should give you better insights on the sessional draw. Okay, and then based on what happens there, it should give you information how it should operate next, or better parameters on what to monitor to be able to determine what it wants to do next, even though you might not be able to do it at the current present time, okay, after a certain move has happened. Okay, so I think it got a little bit longer, a lot longer than I wanted, but gave a lot of analogies. I try to give a lot of situations, but yeah, your narrative should be very close to your heart on basically how you operate, and it should be pretty closely tied to your model and how you understand and reprice. It's just the unfolding of how you understand price, okay? And it's you articulating it. Like it's you being able to articulate it. Most of the time you're not practiced, or you're not practiced on articulating it, so you don't even know what narrative is. But narrative is just how are you understanding, reading, internalizing, and based on how you understand price and your understanding of how price should operate, how do you inject that? How does that impart into what the present candles are doing, and how some of the future candles should operate based on this understanding. As long as you're journaling, as long as you're focusing on where price is trying to draw to, I think all of this stuff comes naturally. The main culprit is probably that you're not focusing on where price is trying to draw to. Okay, you're focusing on where do I enter, what order block do I enter, what fair value I got to enter. Don't care about that. Alright, that will come along the way. Focus on where is price trying to draw to, right? So like this current swing to be in question, is it trying to draw up here? Alright, or maybe it's not trying to draw. Is it trying to draw down here? Do you have to be right? No, because you're not trading every single swing. But whenever you get a chance to look at the charts, whether it's live or you get to read what has happened, okay, or you get to see snapshots, you should be in the practice of trying to determine, like, gun to your head, where is it indicating that it wants to try to draw to, okay? And as long as you can figure out where it's trying to draw to, the entries and the PD arrays that are pertinent, it becomes a lot more straightforward. It's not like rocket science. There's only so many arrays. There's only so many ways that you can like break down and think about a certain price swing. You just have to focus on one price swing at a time. Okay. And once you get a lot of experience with this, a lot of iterations of this, and you get a lot of positive examples, Okay, and then you get a lot of positive examples on your framework in terms of entry criteria and entry pattern model-ish framework thing. You feel more solid in all of this and more confident to be able to trust your model. Okay, because you'll be able to trust your daily draw more. You'll be able to trust your weekly draw more. You'll be able to trust your trade draw more, like either a trade setup where it wants to draw to. You'll be able to trust that more because you got all this experience. You got all of these examples and positive things under your belt. So hopefully this talk is beneficial, and if there's any confusions or further questions, I guess you could put in the community tab or under the comments in this video. And if you have any other good video ideas, put it on under the community tab. Alright, but thank you to what was it, Denise 5974. I think this is a very solid question. How do you know when you're going to trade that narrative or not? Always trade your narrative. Alright, like if you're not trading your narrative, what that's saying to me, if I say that, is I don't know what's happening in price. If I don't know what's happening in price, can't make sense of what's happening, whether that's on a weekly, on a daily, or on the 1 minute or 15 second or 5 minute spectrum, why am I pressing a button? Of course I'm going to always be trading my narrative, because I want to be trading when these candles make sense to me, you know, when I feel like I know what I'm looking for. And how do I know what I'm looking for? It's going to be like very dependent on my narrative. Alright, hopefully this is helpful.